So whenever I go to make a purchase, oftentimes I go out and I check out reviews. And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about this tool called ShipKit, but let me tell you a little bit of the backstory before I actually get there. So I've been watching videos with this guy, Brandon, for a little while because he does a couple of cool different things. He was in a Google challenge. He's got some really cool videos on YouTube. And so if you're vibe coding and you're struggling through vibe coding, you may have run across his videos. He has a school community, had it a while ago, and then also then built this thing called ShipKit. And I hadn't checked it out, but a colleague of mine said, you really back and check out ShipKit because it's something, it's got some real power behind it. And so what is ShipKit? So it's got this sort of set of tools, templates and things like that. And so I wouldn't classify this in your typical school community because in this case, this takes your vibe coding and more or less will set you on fire where you can actually get stuff done and implement the things that you've been dreaming about actually doing. And so think about it that way, that, this is a way of buying a set of prompts, some instructions, some capabilities, and building your capabilities, whether it's in Claude Code or, whatever platform that you're currently on. This is not your Lovable or, other type of building sort of app. This is actually real world vibe coding in Claude Code or in Cursor to actually implement and get your tool out into the world. And so I joined with a little bit of hope that there would be some good courses in here and things like that. And so, just to focus in on the courses just for a second, he kind of walks you through how to use the templates that he has, how to look at the overall ShipKit setup. And then whenever you get down to this next level, he's actually stepping you through like building your own, kind of app as well. So not just necessarily starting with a template, but, also, how to think about building an app in vibe coding so that it will be something substantial. Now, I went to a lot of different mentors and things like that. I had an app that was pretty close to being released as part of a different school community and was about to, make, I think, some pretty big mistakes because I am not a developer. I tell people this all the time. I have had developers work for me. I've had a lot of different people work for me that build tools and things like that. And so we can create, really cool concepts. But again, without knowing some of the pitfalls, you sort of could have some really big development problems. And so Brandon comes at it from a developer's perspective, but he's providing tools to sort of close that gap between developer and non-developer, I would say. And so let me talk about, just a little bit of some of the things that I've actually created. So I started with this tool called Pod Accelerate. For those of you who know me, I have a couple podcasts and I look at the gap in trying to build a podcast as pretty substantial because you have to piece together a lot of different tools again. And so I was building this platform where people could come in and actually go through the process of creating their own podcast. And this tool actually steps you through from how you plan your original podcast, how do you brainstorm it and things like that. How do you then work on managing guests or generating show notes and also organizing your content? And then through the final publishing process, what should you consider there and how do you actually build everything out? And so Pod Accelerate is all about that. And this is a tool that you can actually sign into. You can actually come in here, you can log into the tool itself. Once you're inside of the tool, you can see I've got Life Science Success, my podcast inside of here. If I click on the podcast, I can go deeper. I can actually, this is a play podcast that I had as I was trying to build the tool out, that you could go through like all of the published episodes that I have. And then once you've got that part, then my next part was, well, I'd like to make it so that people have a public page. And so why not give people a public page with the album cover and make it so that it's really attractive for people to go to, and they could actually come in and click on the different episodes. I'm just randomly clicking, by the way. This is not, me thinking about, how things should go through, but it's got show notes. It's got all sorts of details in here because it's a part of Pod Accelerate. All of this was built in ShipKit. So everything here built in ShipKit. The second thing that I built was I have a mastermind. And in that mastermind, somebody had told me they have a challenge with understanding how to move from content to actually getting to that end point of getting leads. And so I thought, rather than just building it in my school community, I have both the content and conversion school community and I have the digital spotlight school community. Instead of just doing that, why not use ShipKit and build a tool that actually steps people through this thing? And so again, if I go back to the dashboard inside a content path, you can see it's got the digital visibility in here. If I click inside of that, then it's got different checklists that people walk through. And this is meant to sort of step people through piece by piece. How do you create your ICP? How do you create your 30-day content calendar? How do you then schedule those posts and go high level if that's what you're using? How do you then build all of this out so that you've got that initial piece in place? Once you've got that, then how do you then look at strategic network building? How do I go back to LinkedIn and start building an actual network that then I can leverage and move forward? And so again, this is another tool that I built because of ShipKit. And so this wouldn't have been possible, I don't think, this quickly. By the way, this tool went from concept to initial reality, I would say, over a weekend. I mean, it was probably a pretty intense couple of days of, sort of going back and forth with the AI and building things out. Then after that, then moving it forward and giving access to my mastermind. They have access now. Now I'm actually coming back into here today and recording videos in here today. So there will be videos in this environment, just like you saw inside of ShipKit. And so whenever you think about what is ShipKit built on, I think it's built on ShipKit. So just to kind of come back to this, I think Brandon did a little bit of his own sort of thinking in this in terms of how do I leverage my own templates, to build these things out. So let me go a little bit further now. So the next thing that I did was, I've mentioned before on several of my other videos that I use Make and N8N automations for a lot of different things. One of the recent templates that Brandon came out with is one that's built on trigger.dev. What trigger.dev allows you to do is background processing of stuff. So you kind of think about whatever Make or N8N currently does for you, you could have trigger.dev go off and process for you. So I wanted to experiment with that. I built this tool called TaylorX AI. And essentially the idea around this tool was, how do you give people something where if you're an executive and you got like all these skills that you've built over, say, a 15 or 30 year career, now all of a sudden you're competing against lots of people. How do I keep all that stuff in mind whenever I'm building my next resume? How do I leverage a tool to actually do that? And so I built this tool out in ShipKit. So I went to ShipKit and I said, hey, look, I want to leverage the trigger.dev template so that people can take their resume and then have the resume strip out all of the skills as you apply for jobs and you add more skills, because oftentimes as we run across jobs that we want to apply for, we're listing more and more skills. And so how do I again get this tool to do that? So you could kind of see I'm still in the testing mode here. This thing isn't out in the real world yet, but I would say it is not very far from being able to be released. And I want to click on a couple of these tabs because you can kind of see, like, inside of the search, I built out a super extensive search where you're like, hey, look, here's the floor of what I want to look at, and here's the ceiling of what I want to look at. Here are the kind of jobs that I want to, sort of look at as well. I want a collection of resumes. So I have primary resumes. So these would be resumes that you uploaded for yourself, right? So you have that. And then there's a RAG database. For those of you who don't know what this is, it is a retrieval augmented AI that essentially chunks out your resume and then saves those chunks so that the AI has that as a reference going forward. Every single time that I upload a resume, it chunks it out and then stores it in its memory, keeps that in its primary memory so that things can move forward. You can see some of the tests actually failed. As I come down here, different jobs actually succeeded, and then you've got resumes that were created. I can go back to the specific job that the resume was created for, et cetera. And so that was that. And then I mentioned skills a second ago. what's happening every single time that I tell the AI that I've got a new skill, or, hey, look, I had the skill. It might not be as clear on my resume or whatever, but this is something that I can actually do. It saves that. And so it saves all of these skills as a long list. Again, these things become valuable whenever you're applying for jobs, and this wouldn't have been possible without ShipKit. Also, look, you need to be able to have profiles for people. So if somebody's, got a subscription or whatever, you might want to have that profile for the person. I also want to have an admin page. Like I said, this thing isn't out in the world today, but the whole idea is, give me like a cost estimate of what is this costing me on a monthly basis, so that I know, what am I paying versus what are people paying to use the tool on an ongoing basis. It's no fun to create tools for people and have them cost you. The whole idea around this is that, eventually this becomes some sort of an enterprise. And so with that, let me just share with you one last thing. And I talked about content path a second ago. So I want to sort of talk about this in more of a coder's kind of world, and some of this may look very confusing for you, but I want to sort of alleviate some of the pressure of this and just say that Brandon does a great job in walking you from, hey, look, I am not a coder, to understanding how to use the tool. So I wouldn't worry about anything that's currently on the screen as being scary. I remember whenever I originally saw this, I was like, look, I don't know what this thing is. I don't know how to use it or whatever. The tool that I'm currently in, by the way, is Google's anti-gravity. Anti-gravity is something that is fairly new, and this is more cutting edge, I would say. Most of the videos that you're going to find inside of ShipKit really focus in how to use cursor and things like that. It's going to look exactly the same. It doesn't look any different. The reality is you'll get access to, the similar models and things like that. So, just to kind of share with you, if you don't understand this platform, that's okay. You'll be fine as you get into the other platform. Primarily, you're using an AI model normally on this right-hand side. That's why I sort of, moved it around here so that you could see it a little bit better. I also use Claude Code directly, so that is what is down here in the terminal. And so you can kind of see that over here, I've got an existing chat. I successfully generated the database migration to add the video URL is a response that the AI recently had. And all I was saying was, hey, look, I want to be able to add videos and have them be at the top of my page. I'm just explaining to the AI there. As I said, Brandon has done a really good job overall on the left-hand side here. This is all ShipKit. So whenever I say, the things that I'm working on are ShipKit related, this AI docs thing is privately ShipKit. And you can't get access to it any other way than to buy ShipKit. So, I would tell people, look, as you think about the future of how these things get accelerated for you in learning these kinds of environments, to me, tying to somebody like Brandon is really important. He has these templates in here. So this is one that is specific to the ability to be able to create an environment like I created in Content Path, right? So I started with kind of a template, and then from that, he has these different prompts in here that I just drag over and say, hey, look, I want to generate the master idea for the thing that I'm trying to build out. I want to create the app name. Content Path wasn't something that was in my head. Essentially, it created a series of names, and then from that, all of the pieces to create Content Path came together through this prompt that he created. Generate the UI. You saw the user interface just a little bit ago, so that's in here. How to create the logo. This little stair step logo that is part of Content Path, that is part of Pod Accelerate, that is part of the TaylorX. These are all created initially inside of ShipKit. So these were prompts that are created in here. You take it over to ChatGPT, drop it in, and it creates a beautiful prompt for you in a minute. Then the app pages. How do you want the pages to play out? How do you want the functionality to work and things like that? Bring the wireframes. I got to show you this. So hold on one second. Let me pause the video here. All right. So I pulled up Figma because essentially, so inside of ShipKit, you get this basic set of, I would say, ASCII wireframes, right? And so I drug those ASCII wireframes in here. This is for Taylor X, by the way. So I drug those into here. And then you see, this is what it created. These are wireframes. These are wireframes that ShipKit created to create the Taylor X layout and branding and things like that. When you look at what I currently have in Taylor X, it's this. This is what it created. And then I took it back to back to Claude and said, hey, I want you to create these pages, create this layout for me. And it created, that layout. And then I had something to start with my app and actually build the different pieces out. So again, think about how you're vibe coding today. Where if you're not a coder, I guarantee you're struggling with a lot of the things that I struggled with, where I wanted clean user interfaces. I wanted the capability to actually, pull things out. But that capability came from, you could see on the left hand side here, these are the ASCII things that were created by ShipKit. So this is what was created by ShipKit. I drug it in here and then said, hey, look, I want you to create these pages for me. And Figma created this. I'm not a Figma creator. I'm not somebody who develops stuff in Figma. And so again, ShipKit. So all ShipKit. Let me go back just one last time, and then I'll kind of wrap things up because I know I'm getting kind of long here in the video. I want to sort of tell people that, look, I'm passionate about this, but at the same time, like as you're thinking about, the things that you can actually build, and the reality today that you can build them, is something that's real. He also, helps you create your data models, create your system design, generate your build order. And that's not where it ends either, because then he has all of these other things on the left-hand side where it goes through creating and troubleshooting things like, bugs. How do I take care of a bug fix and things like that? And so he's got these dev templates are what are in here, where it goes through bug fix and cleanup and all that kind of stuff. It just really helps you move from somebody who, again, is not a coder to somebody that actually can go implement tools. So I hope this video has been helpful. I know I've gone a little long here. We're at almost 20 minutes, and I wanted to just, sort of share with everybody what I'm passionate about with regards to ShipKit and what it can actually deliver. And I hope to see more people in the community, and hopefully this has provided some value for you, and you take a look at Brandon's tool. Where you go to is ShipKit AI, and you'll find Brandon's page here. Like I said, he's running a special right now. There isn't an affiliate code or anything like that for that, so don't worry about that. But just, again, wanting to share a tool that I've gotten a lot of value out of, and Brandon's provided a lot of value for me, and so I want to pay it forward, and hopefully this benefits him as well. Thanks.